Chapter 43, A Cunning Stunt. You are not going in loud, Ryan, Jack's voice commanded over the comms. Stay quiet. No guns unless absolutely necessary. Steffi says go now, in and out as fast as you can. You've probably still got the drop on them. Ryan sighed. Yeah, okay. Any word from Jeff or Lindsay? Nothing yet. Ryan had a bad feeling about that. Swift, but ever wary, the ground team crept to the side of the self-storage unit. There was a ladder to the roof next to an emergency exit, and without any consultation, Matt immediately went for the ladder, making his way to the roof with his sniper rifle slung over his shoulder and his pistol at the ready at his hip. They waited for him to reach the top, and after a few minutes, he waved down to give the all-clear. They entered the storage shed through a fire escape, finding themselves at the end of a long corridor with a yellowed plastic strip door at the far end. Ryan held up a closed fist, the universal symbol for them to hold up. Barely audible was the shuffling of several pairs of feet on the other side of the door, the faintest hint of a shadow of movement thrown for a brief second against the wall. Ryan looked to Trevor and Jeremy and back to his fist, shaking it as an indication to stay as he withdrew his knife, already appreciating the weight and feel of it in his hands. He made his way to the end of the corridor, pressing his back to the wall next to the strip door, barely breathing. He turned his head slightly and nearly jumped as he saw Jeremy and Trevor were right next to him, having blatantly ignored his order to stay. At least they were quiet. He glared at them, and they smirked back at him defiantly. He waited until the footsteps passed the strip door, silently pushing the flaps aside and peering out. Two figures clad in black were making their way up the hall with their backs to them. Ryan held up two fingers and quietly moved out. Trevor was the fastest. His lanky frame gave him the perfect angle to slit the throat of the random closest to them, who barely managed a choked gargle before they collapsed on the floor in a crumpled heap, alerting the other to their similar fate as Ryan plunged his own knife into their back, clamping a hand over their mouths so they couldn't cry out as their bodies sagged and went limp in his arms. Two more rounded the corner just as Ryan let the body fall to the floor. Shit. What the fuck? One cried out, pulling a gun as the other tried to run for it. Ryan flipped the knife in his hand, catching it by the blade before flinging it at the one going for their gun, catching them in the throat and making them stumble forward, dropping the gun and clutching at the knife in their neck. Their hands reached the hilt and instinctively pulled it out, a thick spray of blood immediately spurting from the wound, slowing to a pulsing flow beneath the scrabbling fingers of the random as they fell to their knees in shock. Not bad for a first-time throw. The thought flashed in his mind before Jeremy took off, chasing the second random around the corner. Trevor followed him, and Ryan leapt to his feet to follow, retrieving his knife and making sure the other wasn't getting back up. There was a scuffle, the sound of fists hitting flesh, and by the time Ryan arrived, the random was in a heap on the floor, head twisted at an unnatural angle, eyes staring, unseeing at the ceiling. Jeremy spat blood and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, smearing blood from his freshly split lip across his chin. All right, I don't care anymore. Everyone dies. Ryan just shook his head. I mean, realistically, they were all going to die anyway, so... He couldn't help but feel a little bit proud. Trevor looked back at his phone, the blinking indication of Michael's tracking chip on the screen. Come on, they're supposedly down this way. The skull-faced random strode into the room just as the pair finished changing what looked like the final collection bag. Be ready to move, they warned. We don't want to be here if they have to give out the location. There's no doubt things are going to get messy. Good. I love messy, the shortest random professed. Of course you do. Skullface rolled their eyes. The bald one finished changing Gavin's bag, placing the full one back in the tray with the other. It would be so fucking cool to watch. I wonder how many people will show up. Who would you bet on? The shortest one mused. I know the Lost have it out for the fakes. The Vagos are pretty keen to see them gone, but they're kinda out of area. Don't know if they'd be bothered coming all this way out here. Personally, my money's still on the fakes, the bald one confessed. You really don't think they're gonna try something with the others? Skullface raised an eyebrow. The others? Now Michael was worried. What if they'd gotten their hands on someone else? The bald one shrugged. I don't know. Really depends on where their loyalties lie. They're unpredictable. I mean, maybe if they manage to get the actual vagabond back. The new guy seems pretty capable, but he's not the vagabond. Michael hadn't thought it was that obvious, but he supposed these guys would have been paying close attention, and as good as Trevor was, he definitely was no Ryan. The shortest random rolled their eyes. Are you still on that theory that he's living with the altruists? Michael silently scoffed. They'd checked the altruist camp long ago. No sign of Ryan at all. All I'm saying is that I don't think he's dead. The altruist camp would be a good place to lay low. I mean, who wants to hang out with a bunch of nudist hippies? The short ones shook their head. Man, old dongs just don't do it for me. I doubt they do it for him either, Skullface interrupted. Dead or not, he's not coming back. The bald one looked like they might be about to argue, but thought better of it, and Michael felt his heart sink a little at the thought. Like I said, Skullface continued, be ready to go. I doubt we're going to be able to salvage anything left behind. There was a noise from outside the room, something hitting the ground, what sounded like someone yelling out. Some more thuds. Very soft, hard to hear, but then Michael wasn't sure how much the drop in blood pressure was affecting his senses. He felt very lightheaded now. He was reasonably certain sleep deprivation was also playing a role. The way the random's head snapped around made him sure the sounds were real, and he couldn't help but feel hopeful that it was the crew coming for them. Leave 'em. Come on, the skull-faced one instructed, the other two following them out the door into the dark hallway beyond, leaving Michael and Gavin temporarily alone. Do you hear that, Gavin? The others are going to come for us. They're expecting a war, hoping we'll lose. He barked a laugh. It sounded far more forced than he would have liked. Good fucking luck. He hoped the crew were one step ahead of them. They already knew their location. Probably. So there was that. But the fact that they hadn't heard anything yet made him anxious. His skin prickled with goosebumps, and he felt cold. Far colder than he should have. Gavin was slow to respond, the blood loss hitting him hard. Michael? His voice was so quiet now, barely a whisper, lips only just moving. Gav? You okay? How are you feeling, boy? Gavin breathed what might have been a laugh, but it sounded more like a sigh. I'm tired, Michael. Gavin, come on, boy. Stay with me. You gotta fight it. We can't let them win. Gavin's eyelids fluttered, fighting to stay open. It's okay. They won't win. He breathed a laugh that sounded very strained. Michael, I think I need a nap, Michael. Oh, no, you fucking don't. If I don't wake up, my boy. Gavin, no. Gavin sighed and smiled, ever so slightly, as he closed his eyes. I'm glad I met you. Michael's voice cracked and was too loud. Gav! You two are just touching, you know that? The sarcastic voice made Michael's head whip around. He fought the exhaustion he felt with anger and hatred, and the need to hurt the people who had done this to them. Skullface was gone, but the other two randoms had reappeared in the doorway with barely a sound, the shorter one holding the same bloody blade that made Michael clench his hands involuntarily and grind his teeth together not so long ago. You, Michael hissed, you sick sons of bitches. He knew better than to let his true emotions show, so as usual he masked them, spewing bile and obscenities instead. The random only seemed more amused, raising an eyebrow and smirked beneath their bandanas. You really only have yourself to blame for this, you know? We wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for you. The bald random half nodded in agreement, wandering back into the room to stand closer to Gavin, curiously inspecting the blood flow. The shorter one continued. I mean, we all get our inspiration from somewhere, right? And the fake AH crew is just so successful. They have such a great role model. Teamwork, friendships, deep emotional bonds. All those lovely little things you read about in the fairy tales. You even got romance, depending on where you look. It's disgustingly picture perfect. They stepped forward and held their palms open. And then you get us, the ones who bleed and sweat tireless effort, the ones who will stop at nothing to reach their goals, the ones who will work day and night to perfect their craft. And they are perfect. And yet, despite how hard they work, and despite how well they get every single job done, they were never quite good enough for the fake AH crew. Oh no, the fakes are too good for the likes of us. You all made that abundantly clear. And now it's our turn to make something clear. We don't take kindly to being ignored. They were seething now. Michael could see the anger briefly flash in the eyes of the other, but there was a hint of sadness there too, of rejection. A chill ran down Michael's spine at the thought. It's petty, but you'd be surprised how petty people can be. These were the ones who never made it. The ones who'd looked up to them, admired them, emulated them, been rejected by them, told them to leave. This one's not going to make it. The bald random barely registered any emotion as they nodded toward Gavin's chair. Bleed might have been too quick. He's pretty skinny. Oh well. Gavin had gone very still. He was quiet and pale, and Michael wasn't sure if it was just that he didn't have his glasses, or if Gavin had actually stopped breathing. His own heart nearly stopped in his chest. Gavin? Gavin didn't respond. Gavin? Gavin! Fuck! Gavin! His voice cracked, but Gavin still didn't move. The random cocked their head sideways at Gavin's limp form, moving closer to inspect it. Yeah, looks like you might just be out of time on this one, they commented coolly. Michael no longer cared about saving face. His sole focus was Gavin. Please, Gavin, hold on, boy. We can make it through this, just a little longer. His voice caught in his throat, choked in a sob, and his eyes teared. Gav, say something, please, please. He blinked and tears broke again as he stifled a sob. He squeezed his eyes shut as the shorter random made their way back to his side, looked over at Gavin's body, and sneered down at him. Aw, isn't this just a heart-wrenching scene? A voice, Ryan's voice, drifted in from the doorway, dark and tinged with danger. I think you mean heartrending. It's okay. It's a common misnomer. People get confused with gut-wrenching. I mean, you wouldn't exactly use the phrase gut-rending. Although, we could make it appropriate in this particular circumstance. You see, not many people get the best of us, but no one gets the best of us and lives to tell about it. Michael had never been so happy to hear one of Ryan's patronizing lectures. That son of a bitch. Son of a bitch! Jeff exclaimed, staring, mouth agape at the figure in front of the car. It can't be, Lindsay began, but Jeff shook his head. It's not. Shadles fucking said he had a twin. We thought he was crazy. It was all a fucking elaborate setup. Before they could say any more, their doors were yanked open, and they were both immediately seized by the men in black and dragged out of the car. They were forced to their knees and shoved roughly in front of the man in the suit, while another patted them down for weapons, pulling pistols off both of them. Hello, Jeffrey. Hello, Red. Or should I say, Lindsay? Lindsay's eyes widened. Like Ryan, few people in Los Santos knew her true identity. It was jarring to hear her name spoken. Alright, this is bullshit. What the fuck is going on? Who the fuck are you? What do you want, and where the fuck are my boys? It's a good question. Where indeed? The man looked around to the surrounding hills, carefully scanning the rapidly lightening sky for signs of choppers or jets. I was expecting more of a show of force. I thought you'd at least put up a fight for Lindsay, the beloved leader of the fakes. But then again, you turned up, so I suppose that's better than nothing. As for where your boys are, soon all of Los Santos will know. He waved a hand, and a few of the men peeled away to search the surrounding areas. What the fuck? Jeff repeated. The man scoffed. You really have no clue, do you? Is it that hard to figure out? I expected better. Just keep talking, asshole. Jeff thought to himself, continuing to play dumb. By now, they'd been without radio contact long enough that Steffi would have told Jack and the crew to go ahead and gotten some of the others on standby. The man in the suit gave a signal, and a few of the vans towards the rear of the convoy reversed, turned around on the narrow road, and sped away, undoubtedly, now satisfied that the rest of the fakes weren't hiding out waiting to spring a trap on them here, heading to the storage shed at Sandy Shores to try to head off the crew sent to rescue Michael and Gavin. Jeff hoped the network was solid. The boys might need the backup after all. The man in the suit hummed a giggle, as if we're the only ones who want you dead. Lindsay looked to Jeff apprehensively. So who are you? Lindsay asked, her tone far more moderate and professional. Oh, please. You can't tell me my brother never mentioned me. He feigned offense. It was all he ever wanted. Retribution for my untimely death, revenge on the people who caused it. The fake AH crew, the vagabond, Los Santos and its criminal underbelly. He became rather obsessed. So you let him think you were dead? You convinced people he was crazy? Jeff was confused now. How he had managed to cover up all evidence of his existence? It was doable, but certainly not easy. Jeff was wary. He knew the same thoughts would be going through Lindsay's head, and glanced over to see her expression matched his. Oh, Shane was crazy. Just not in the right way to make the vagabond leave the fake AH crew. To make him question his own sanity, fearing he too would crack under the pressure. No, my brother wasn't the most stable, but we did take some liberties in recreating his records. Our profilers did a brilliant job on that. Worked a treat. Unfortunately, Shane never would learn the truth. He couldn't. But he played such an important role in all of this. His sacrifice won't be forgotten. So you faked the records. We knew the vagabond had connections in the LSPD. And now we know who. Poor Dr. Ellis. He recently met his own untimely end in an unfortunate car accident. How the fuck did they get inside the LSPD? How could they have planted that kind of information unless... How? Jeff asked outright, unable to stop himself. Oh, I'm not dumb, Ramsey. I'm not going to give away all of my secrets, but I am a man of my word. You want your boys back? He nodded to one of the men who made a hand signal to someone in the van that had followed them in, the one jamming the signal, and a moment later the man returned a thumbs up. Another man handed Shadles, a tablet, and he tapped at a few screens before turning it around to face them. Here they are. It showed video footage of Michael and Gavin alone in the storage shed, needles in their arms, blood collecting in bags as if they were at a donation center. What is this? Lindsay demanded. We thought we'd try our hand at streaming again. We did so well last time. He looked down at the screen. Over 900 viewers. Not bad. Nearly 1,000 people in Los Santos with an interest in the fake AH crew. And perhaps their whereabouts. You want to know where your boys are? He tapped at the screen again before holding it up to show them. A text box had popped up with their location, address, map, photo, coordinates. All the information to find them. Well, so do they. Bullshit, Jeff spat, knowing that was the same address they'd tracked Michael's ship to. Shadle's twin smirked. You didn't think you were the only ones interested in finding them, did you? The race is on. Suddenly it all made sense. Clearly that's not live, Jeff remarked nonchalantly. Otherwise, we'd be seeing our boys busting them out. Shadle's twin smirked, faltered. Excuse me? Oh, you thought we didn't know where they were? Lindsay asked, her own grin spreading. The man snorted. You're bluffing. Jeff and Lindsay exchanged a glance. Well, we are, or we aren't. Jeff smirked. Better call it. Shadle's brother again looked around at his own men, searching for any indication they'd found even a trace of the fakes in the surrounding area. Nothing. For a second, his face flashed fear. He turned his back and reached for his phone, punching numbers and holding it to his ear. A few seconds passed, and nothing. He paced and started to look more worried. He waved another of his men over and said something to him that neither Jeff nor Lindsay could hear. The man immediately hurried off to take care of whatever business he'd just been given. Shadles, not Shadles, Jeff had to remind himself, smoothed his hair down and scratched nervously at the nape of his neck. He was getting impatient. Jeff knew their time was running out. He only hoped Steffi had gotten word out quickly enough. His eyes scanned over the horizon behind the vans, near the entrance of Humane Labs. Facing the glaring sun, even with his sunglasses, he had to squint to make out the figures approaching. He drew a long breath. If that's how you want to play, fine. I can play hardball too. Shadow's brother drew his pistol and leveled it at Jeff's head. Jeff held his breath. The smoke grenade sailed clear over the van in front of him, bounced, and rolled to a gentle stop at Jeff's knees. Jeff looked up at not Shadow's and flashed a broad smile before he was consumed in smoke. Then, all hell broke loose.